Do you have grapes growing in your garden? Or are you lucky enough to have a wild grapevine growing near you? Well, I just trimmed my grapevines and I hate to see all those leaves going to waste. Sure, you could put them in your compost pile, but wouldn't it be more fun to eat them? I mean, who doesn't love a good dolma? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how I preserve my grape leaves step by step in this video. Welcome to True Freedom Permaculture, where I show you all the tips and tricks you need to have a green thumb, even if you weren't born with one. I used to be really intimidated by this process of preserving grape leaves, but it was for no reason at all. It is extremely simple, and I'm going to show you how. So let's go to my kitchen. You're going to need the following items: approximately 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. I'm using fresh lemon juice today, but you can definitely use bottled, and in fact, bottled might even be preferable because the acidity level tends to be more consistent when using bottled lemon juice. So if you're canning these, you might want to use that instead because you want to make sure you have a high enough level of acidity. You are also going to need some salt. Don't use the expensive kind. This is just regular sea salt here. And a couple of bamboo skewers. You're going to need some ice and some water. I have about 8 cups of water here that I'm going to bring to a boil, and once it comes to a boil, I'll reduce it to simmer. So let's turn the burner on and get that started. While your water is boiling, you're going to want to prepare your grape leaves. So wash them really well. I usually wash them in my sink because I usually have too many to use just a bowl, so that works better for me. And what I'm going to go through is I'm going to trim off the stem and make sure that you're sorting through them. So for example, this one, if you can see, it's got some holes in it, so it really wouldn't be the best for filling because the stuffing might just like slip through the holes. I'm not going to throw it away. I can use it to line the bottom of the pot when I'm steaming the dolmas. So some of these larger ones I'll set aside for that. And you just want to make sure that you trim the stems really close to the leaf. I already tried to do this when I prune my grape leaves, so some of these are already done. Let me try to find one where it needs to be done. Okay, so here's one, for example, where you can see the stem's like a little bit long on it, so I'm just going to cut it off a little shorter, so that'll be better. This one's a little discolored, put that aside. The other thing that you can do too is I saw someone one time, they took a stack of them and lined up all the stems. These are, again, already pretty short, but I'll pretend here. Yeah, they lined up all the stems and then they trimmed all the stems at once. And I was like, wow, that's really brilliant. You know, it was so much more efficient than going one by one by one. So if you have a lot of stems to trim, that could be a useful tip for you. I'm just going to keep going until I work through the whole pile. Another good thing about leaving the stem on is that I feel like they are less likely to tear. Kind of keeps the leaf together. Make sure that you check the front and the back because sometimes there's like insect eggs on the backs of them and you definitely don't want to be eating those necessarily. So now I have my stack of washed and trimmed grape leaves, and I'm going to divide each of these into stacks of 10. Okay, I'm done. I have my piles of grape leaves here. Everything is divided into stacks of 10, and I believe my water is boiling, so I'm going to head over there in a second. But first, I have to prepare my ice bath. I'm going to take my ice, just throw it into a bowl, and I'm just going to fill it with water and have it sitting next to the stove so it's ready when I want to use it. My water's at a nice simmer here, so you can see I have everything lined up in order of what we're going to do. We're going to take the leaves, put them into the simmering water, then the ice bath, and then over here onto the strainer. I have it sitting over a bowl so it'll catch any of the water, but want most of the water to drain. So I'm gonna take some tongs, and we have our leaves divided out already. And all you're gonna do is plunge the leaves into the water, like so. And I usually give it about 15 seconds or so on each side. That was about 15 seconds. Let's flip them over. Take these leaves out, and you're going to, again, using your tongs, put them into your water bath to stop the cooking process. And it also makes it so that you can handle them a lot sooner. And once you've done that, you're just going to drape them over the side of your strainer. Like that. Voila. So I'm just going to repeat this process with all of my bundles of 10 leaves. Now at some point you might notice that you'll have to replenish your ice bath with more ice, so totally fine, just add more. We're gonna use this pan again, so don't go ahead and wash it, but what I'm gonna do is combine the water from my ice bath now that I've done all the leaves. I'm gonna let this cool down and I'm gonna use it to water my plants. Why not? Because all you've done is just dip the grape leaves in there. There's nothing else in there. Now we're going to take our same pot and I'm going to make the brine for our grape leaves. We're going to add 3 cups of water. And about a tablespoon of salt. Now I'm just going to bring this up to a boil. While my brine comes to a boil, I'm going to roll each stack of 10 leaves into a cigar shape like this. I find it's easier for me to have the pointy side up and kind of like a burrito. Just fold the sides in and roll them up. And this is another reason why you don't want the stems too long, because otherwise they'll poke holes in the other leaves. Then you roll it and you have kind of a cigar shape like that. Voila. Now, here's where you could freeze these if you wanted to. So you could stick these in a freezer bag and just fill them up with these cigars of rolled and blanched leaves, pop them in the freezer, and they should last you for up to 6 months. But today I'm putting them in a jar and I'm gonna put them in my refrigerator. So I'm gonna continue with that. So I like to roll these again with the darker side facing down onto the cutting board. And I don't know, I just feel like it rolls up a little bit nicer. And I have seen some people add a little bit of salt to the leaves before they roll them up. It makes sense to me because if bacteria is going to grow, it's going to grow inside of the leaf where it's dark in there. And so salt is a natural preservative. I don't see why not. I don't see the harm, so I'm going to add a little bit. So I'm going to repeat this process over and over until I fill my jar. I have now filled my jar with my rolled leaves. If you are planning on canning these, make sure that you use properly sterilized jars and lids. This is just a regularly cleaned jar because, like I said, mine are just going in the fridge. But there we have it. And when we pour in the brine, what tends to happen is when the leaves are submerged, they tend to become unfurled and these little bundles tend to float up to the surface. And sometimes they stick out of the brine and you don't want that to happen because then they're no longer preserved and they could dry out. So what I'm going to do is enter the bamboo skewers here, and you're going to cut them down. This one I already cut, but you're going to cut them down to a little bit wider than the mouth of your jar. So it's about here or so. Oh, I have to go chase that one down. I just flew across the room. Hold on. Okay, we're back. So now that we have the skewers cut down, you're just going to place them inside the jar, and there we go, so that they form an X. You need 2 of them. This one's still, well, let's see. Yeah, this one's still a little bit long. Let me cut this one down. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so they form an X. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's gonna fill its purpose of holding the leaves down when we pour in the brine. So my salt water had come to a boil in the meantime, and I poured it into this mason jar. I let it cool a little bit first because from prior experience, if you pour in too hot of liquid into a mason jar, sometimes it cracks. So that's what I have in here is this brine. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon of lemon juice to it. Okay, so I'm going to now pour this brine over the grape leaves, and I want to make sure that they're completely covered. But I am going to leave a little bit of space in the jar. Definitely want to do that if you're canning them. Okay, so now my jar is filled. As you can see, the skewers are keeping all of the leaves completely submerged. Now I'm just going to put this lid on, and off to the fridge they go. They should last about 6 months or so in your fridge. That's it, we're done. And whenever you want to use them, just make sure to give them a rinse and some water to rinse off the salty brine. These grape leaves are now ready for you to use whenever you want. And don't limit yourself to just the usual fillings of rice and meat. You could even fill them with cheese and some fresh herbs, like a feta would be really nice, and you could steam them, or you can use them to wrap pieces of fish in and either steam them or grill them. And the leaves will actually prevent the fish from sticking to the bottom of your pot or your grill, either one. Do you have another idea for how to use these? I would love to hear it. Please leave it in the comment section below for us. If you enjoy these types of Middle Eastern, Mediterranean dishes, then you might really like my video I did on roasted carrot hummus. It's delicious, it's colorful, and it happens to be good for you. If that sounds interesting, click on this video that's coming up and I will join you over there. I'll see you soon.